The most dangerous man in professional wrestling just walked back into WWE, and he's got his sights set on ending Bron Breakker's reign of terror. What went down on SmackDown wasn't just a surprise return, it was a declaration of war from Jon Moxley, the man who left WWE to conquer the wrestling world and just came back to remind everyone why he's the most legitimate tough guy in the business. When Moxley looked Bron Breakker dead in the eyes and said, "I will destroy you," it wasn't a promo, it wasn't a threat, it was a promise. And if you think you understand how massive this is, how much this changes everything for WWE, how this confrontation is about to create the most violent and compelling storyline we've seen in years, you need to hear every single detail of what happened, why it happened, and what's coming next. Let me start by painting the picture of how insane this moment actually was. SmackDown was in the middle of a Bron Breakker segment where he was doing his usual thing, standing in the ring, boasting about being the most dangerous man on the roster, issuing open challenges that nobody's brave enough to accept, generally acting like an unstoppable force of nature. The crowd was booing him hard because Bron has been on an absolute tear, destroying everyone in his path, injuring people, ending careers, and showing zero remorse about any of it. He was mid-sentence, talking about how there's nobody left in WWE who can stand up to him, when suddenly the lights in the arena started flickering. Not a normal entrance lighting cue. Flickering. Unstable. Like something was broken or malfunctioning. The crowd immediately sensed something was different, something was wrong, and the arena got this eerie quiet where everyone was holding their breath waiting to see what was about to happen. Then a voice came over the speakers, not music, just a voice, rough and raw and unmistakable. "You want someone who'll stand up to you? You want someone who's not afraid of you? I'm right here." And then Jon Moxley's entrance music hit, and the building exploded. The pop was absolutely nuclear. People were screaming, jumping out of their seats, completely losing their minds because Jon Moxley in WWE in 2025 was something most fans thought they'd never see again. Moxley left WWE years ago, went to AEW, became one of the biggest stars in the industry outside of WWE, built a reputation as the toughest, most uncompromising wrestler in the world. And now he was walking down the ramp toward a WWE ring, toward Bron Breakker, with a look on his face that said he was about to commit acts of violence that would get him arrested in most states. Moxley's appearance was deliberate. No fancy entrance gear, no production, just jeans, boots, and a leather jacket. He looked like he'd just walked out of a bar fight that he won. His hair was messed up, he had tape on his hands like he'd been preparing for a street fight, and every step he took down that ramp radiated this energy of barely controlled violence. This wasn't the Dean Ambrose character WWE fans remembered. This was Jon Moxley, the man who'd spent years in death matches, in main events around the world, proving that he's legitimately one of the toughest human beings in professional wrestling. When Moxley got to the ring, he didn't do a dramatic entrance. He didn't pose on the turnbuckle or play to the crowd. He walked straight up to Bron Breakker, got right in his face, and the intensity of that moment was suffocating. Two men, both considered among the most physically imposing and dangerous performers in the industry, standing nose to nose, neither one backing down. The crowd was chanting Moxley. Moxley, so loud that it was shaking the building, but inside that ring, you could hear a pin drop because both men were completely locked in on each other. Bron, to his credit, didn't back down. He smiled, this arrogant smirk that suggested he thought Moxley coming back was the best thing that could have happened because now he gets to destroy a legend and cement his own status. He started to talk trash, started to say something about how Moxley left WWE because he couldn't cut it, how he ran away to smaller companies where the competition was easier. And that's when Moxley grabbed the microphone out of Bron's hand and delivered one of the most intense promos you'll ever hear. "You think you're tough? You think you're dangerous? You think destroying people who aren't ready for you makes you a killer?" Moxley's voice was low, controlled, but seething with anger. "I've been everywhere you haven't. I've fought everyone you're afraid to. I've been in matches that would end your career before they even started. And I came back to WWE for one reason, to put you down like the rabid dog you are before you hurt anyone else who doesn't deserve it." The crowd lost their minds again. Moxley wasn't playing a character, he wasn't delivering lines, he was speaking truth, and everyone felt it. He continued, "You want to talk about being dangerous? Kid, I am danger. I'm the match that lights the fuse. I'm the violence that you pretend to be. And when I'm done with you, everyone in this company and around the world will understand that there's a difference between being a bully who attacks people from behind and being a fighter who'll stand toe-to-toe with anyone, anywhere, and walk out victorious." Bron's face changed. The smirk disappeared. He realized he wasn't dealing with someone he could intimidate or someone who would back down. Moxley had just challenged him to his face, in front of 15,000 people and millions watching at home, and now Bron had to decide whether he was going to prove his words or be exposed as someone who's only tough when he has the advantage. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and then Moxley said the words that are going to define this entire feud: "I will destroy you. Not because I hate you, not because I'm jealous of you, but because someone has to, and I'm the only one here who can." What happened next was chaos. Bron shoved Moxley, and Moxley responded with a punch that looked like it legitimately rocked Bron. Security and referees rushed the ring to separate them because it was clear these two were about to start throwing real hands right there in the middle of SmackDown. It took 8 people to keep them apart, and even then both men were trying to fight through the crowd of bodies to get at each other. The show went to commercial with both men still being restrained, still screaming at each other, both looking like they were ready to tear the building down. Now let's talk about why this is so massive, why Moxley returning specifically to confront Bron Breakker is one of the smartest booking decisions WWE could have made. Bron has been positioned as this unstoppable monster, but the problem with monster characters is that they need credible challengers or they become boring. You can only watch someone destroy mid-card talent for so long before the dominance stops feeling impressive and starts feeling repetitive. What Bron needed was someone with legitimate credibility, someone the audience believes could actually beat him, someone who brings their own aura of danger and toughness to the confrontation. Jon Moxley is perfect for that role. He's not a WWE creation that fans might question the legitimacy of. He's someone who proved himself as a top guy across multiple companies, in multiple countries, in multiple styles of wrestling. When Moxley says he's fought tougher opponents than Bron, fans believe it because they've watched him do it. When Moxley says he's been in more violent matches, fans know it because they've seen his deathmatch wars in AEW and beyond. Moxley brings external credibility that makes Bron's dominance actually mean something when these two finally fight. The contrast in styles is also fascinating. Bron is pure power and athleticism, explosive moves, raw strength, intimidation through physical dominance. Moxley is chaos and experience. He'll use weapons, he'll fight dirty, he'll take you into deep waters and drown you through sheer toughness and refusal to quit. A Bron vs. Moxley match isn't about who's stronger or faster, it's about who wants it more, who can withstand more punishment, who has the heart to keep fighting when their body is telling them to quit. That's the kind of storytelling that creates classic matches. The backstage reaction to Moxley's return has been absolutely wild. Multiple sources are reporting that wrestlers in the locker room were marking out watching it happen live. Veterans who've worked with Moxley before were excited to see him back in a WWE ring. Younger talent who've only heard stories about Moxley's work were starstruck at the opportunity to potentially work with him. And management was apparently thrilled with the crowd reaction and the immediate buzz this generated across social media and wrestling news sites. But there's also reportedly some tension. Some people in WWE are concerned about Moxley coming back and immediately being positioned at the top of the card, potentially taking spots from people who've been grinding in WWE for years building their stock. Some are worried that Moxley's style, which is more violent and extreme than what WWE typically features, might push boundaries that make the company uncomfortable. There are legitimate questions about whether Moxley's creative vision will align with WWE's current direction, or whether there will be conflicts about how matches should be structured and what kind of content is appropriate. The AEW elephant in the room also needs to be addressed. Moxley was one of the faces of AEW, one of their top stars, someone who represented that company's alternative vision for wrestling. Him coming back to WWE is a massive statement about where the industry stands right now, about what opportunities exist where, and about Moxley's own priorities and goals at this stage of his career. Some AEW fans are angry, feeling betrayed that Moxley would go back after being such a vocal critic of WWE in the past. Other fans are excited because Moxley in WWE means potential dream matches and storylines that couldn't happen anywhere else. Let's talk about the potential matches and feuds that Moxley's return opens up. Obviously Bron Breakker is the immediate focus, and that feud could easily carry through multiple pay-per-views with different stipulations and match types. But beyond Bron, think about who else is on the WWE roster right now. Roman Reigns vs. Jon Moxley, former Shield brothers who took completely different paths, now potentially facing each other with years of history and completely different philosophies about what it means to be successful in wrestling. Cody Rhodes vs. Jon Moxley, two men who were instrumental in creating AEW, who took different paths afterward, who have unfinished business from their time together. The younger generation of WWE stars would benefit enormously from working with Moxley. Guys like Carmelo Hayes, Wes Lee, Ilja Dragunov, they could have career-defining matches with Moxley that would elevate them significantly. Moxley has proven throughout his career that he's generous in the ring, willing to make his opponents look great, willing to help younger talent develop and get over. Having him on the roster is a developmental tool for WWE's next generation of stars who can learn from working with someone who's done it all at the highest level. The creative possibilities for how to book Moxley in WWE are endless. Do they lean into his deathmatch reputation and put him in Extreme Rules matches, street fights, and no disqualification scenarios where he can showcase that brutal style? Do they try to rein him in slightly and fit him into WWE's more structured style while still letting his personality and intensity shine through? Do they acknowledge his time away from WWE and make it part of his character, the returning veteran who comes back with new knowledge and new perspectives? Every one of those directions would be interesting if executed well. The promo battles between Moxley and Bron are going to be must-see television. Bron has improved significantly on the microphone and can talk trash with the best of them. But Moxley is on a different level when it comes to cutting promos that feel authentic and real rather than scripted. When Moxley talks, you believe every word because he commits so fully to what he's saying. The verbal exchanges between these two are going to generate just as much buzz as their physical confrontations because both men have strong personalities and neither one backs down from a challenge. The match stipulation when they finally fight is crucial. This can't be just a normal match, it needs to reflect the intensity of their rivalry and the violent natures of both characters. A street fight would work. A no disqualification match would work. A falls count anywhere match would work. Whatever the stipulation is, it needs to allow both men to showcase what makes them special: Bron's explosive power moves and Moxley's willingness to absorb punishment and keep fighting no matter what. The match needs to be memorable, brutal, and definitive in establishing a winner and advancing both characters' stories. The championship implications are also worth considering. Bron has been positioned as a top contender for major championships. Moxley coming back immediately positions him as a main event player. When these two eventually settle their feud, the winner becomes one of the top candidates for whatever championship WWE decides to put on them: the WWE Championship, the World Heavyweight Championship, the Intercontinental Championship if they want to elevate that title by putting it on someone of Moxley's stature. Either way, this feud has championship implications written all over it. The international market reaction to Moxley's return is going to be massive. Moxley has fans all over the world from his work in AEW, New Japan, various independent promotions, and his original WWE run. Those fans in Japan, UK, Mexico, and everywhere else are going to tune into WWE programming to see what Moxley does next. That international appeal makes Moxley incredibly valuable to WWE from a business perspective, and it's part of why bringing him back makes so much sense for the company's global expansion plans. Social media has absolutely exploded since this confrontation. Jon Moxley and Bron Breakker have been trending worldwide on Twitter for days. YouTube videos breaking down the confrontation have gotten millions of views. Wrestling podcasts have dedicated entire episodes to analyzing what this means. Reddit threads are filled with people fantasy booking their dream matches and outcomes for this feud. The engagement metrics are off the charts, which proves that WWE made the right call in bringing Moxley back and immediately putting him in a high-profile feud. The ratings impact of Moxley's return will be significant. SmackDown's viewership for that episode reportedly spiked significantly during his segment. The following week's SmackDown is expected to draw strong numbers because people want to see what happens next between Moxley and Bron. Any pay-per-view that features their match will see increased buy rates or streaming subscriptions because people want to see this confrontation play out. Moxley moves the needle commercially, which is ultimately what WWE cares about most. The long-term plan for Moxley in WWE is still unclear. Is this a short-term deal where he comes back for a specific storyline and then potentially leaves again? Is this a long-term commitment where Moxley is back in WWE for the foreseeable future? Is there flexibility in his schedule that allows him to work WWE while also potentially doing select dates elsewhere? The business details of his return haven't been publicly disclosed, but they'll determine how WWE books him and what kind of role he plays in the company moving forward. The locker room leadership aspect is also important. Moxley is respected throughout the wrestling industry for his work ethic, his toughness, and his willingness to help other wrestlers. Having him in the locker room provides WWE with another veteran voice who can mentor younger talent, mediate conflicts, and provide perspective based on his experience working in different companies with different styles. That leadership presence is valuable beyond just his on-screen performances. The Paul Heyman connection is interesting to consider as well. Heyman managed the Shield back when Moxley was part of WWE as Dean Ambrose. Heyman obviously has a lot of influence in WWE and specifically with Roman Reigns. Could Heyman factor into the Moxley return story somehow? Could there be a storyline where Heyman tries to align Moxley with Roman, or where Heyman is torn between his loyalty to Roman and his history with Moxley? That relationship adds another layer of potential storytelling that WWE could explore. The women's division could also benefit from Moxley's return if WWE decides to tell stories that involve mixed interactions. Moxley's real-life wife Renee Paquette has history with WWE and could potentially factor into storylines. Female wrestlers could align themselves with or against Moxley depending on how feuds develop. While Moxley himself won't be competing against women obviously, his presence on the roster creates opportunities for the women's division to be incorporated into his storylines and supporting roles. The merchandise sales from Moxley's return are going to be substantial. Mox's back shirts are going to sell. Updated versions of his classic designs will sell. Any new gear he creates specifically for this WWE run will sell. Moxley has always had strong merchandise numbers because fans connect with his authentic personality and want to support him. WWE's merchandising machine will capitalize on the buzz around his return to generate significant revenue. The WrestleMania implications are huge. If Moxley is back in WWE for the long term, that means he could potentially be part of WrestleMania, which would be his first WrestleMania appearance in years. Jon Moxley vs Roman Reigns at WrestleMania would be massive. Jon Moxley vs Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania would be huge. Jon Moxley vs whoever's holding a major championship at WrestleMania would draw enormous interest. Having Moxley on the roster gives WWE another proven main event star for their biggest show of the year. The storytelling meta-narrative is also fascinating. Jon Moxley left WWE because he was frustrated with creative direction and wanted more control over his character. He went to AEW and thrived, proving he could be a top guy outside of WWE's system. Now he's back, presumably with more leverage and more influence over how his character is presented. That real-life journey from leaving to finding success elsewhere to returning on his own terms is a compelling story that WWE can incorporate into his on-screen character if they choose to. The Bron Breakker match, whenever it happens, needs to be an absolute war. Both men need to look incredibly strong. The match needs to be violent enough to satisfy fans who expect brutality from a Moxley feud, but structured enough to tell a clear story with logical progression. The finish needs to be decisive, no cheap DQ finishes, no countouts, no screwy finishes. One man needs to pin the other or make them submit after an intense battle, establishing clear superiority and giving the winner momentum while the loser has a reason to want a rematch or move on to other rivalries. The post-match aftermath is just as important as the match itself. Does the feud continue with multiple rematches? Does a decisive winner move on to bigger things? Do they eventually develop grudging respect for each other after beating the hell out of each other? The direction they take after the first match will determine whether this becomes a short-term program or an ongoing rivalry that defines both characters for years to come. What Jon Moxley brings to WWE is something they've been missing, a main event star who feels completely authentic and uncontrived. Everything about Moxley, his look, his demeanor, his in-ring style feels real and legitimate in a way that cuts through the performance aspects of wrestling. When Moxley says, "I will destroy you," fans believe him because everything about his career suggests he's capable of doing exactly that. That authenticity is rare and valuable, and having it back in WWE elevates the entire product. Bron Breakker needed this challenge. He needed someone with Moxley's credibility to legitimize his run as a top guy. If Bron can beat Moxley convincingly, it establishes him as a genuine main event player who can hang with the best in the world. If Bron loses to Moxley, he learns from the experience and comes back stronger with a renewed understanding of what it takes to be at the top. Either outcome advances Bron's story and his development as a character. The confrontation on SmackDown was just the beginning. What comes next is going to be violent, chaotic, unpredictable, and absolutely unmissable. Jon Moxley is back in WWE, he's got Bron Breakker in his crosshairs, and he's promised to destroy him. Whether you're a longtime Moxley fan celebrating his return, a Bron Breakker supporter who thinks he can beat the returning veteran, or just someone who loves watching two legitimate tough guys collide in the most intense way possible, this is the storyline you need to be paying attention to. Because when Moxley says, "I will destroy you," it's not a question of if, it's just a matter of when and how brutal it's going to be when it finally happens.